The council chamber of the Andrix Dominion stretched farther than any human eye could comprehend. It was a cathedral of arrogance, carved from crystalline spires that shimmered with colors no living being could name. Light refracted through impossibly thin walls, scattering across consoles stacked like urban skylines. Every surface pulsed with streams of data, maps of star systems, fleet movements, planetary economies, all meticulously logged and analyzed for the grand verdict, the fate of humanity. High Arbitrator Vrel, an imposing figure of iridescent exoskeleton and six-jointed limbs, floated above the central dais, his voice amplified by harmonic resonators that made it resonate through every corner of the chamber. "The humans are doomed," he declared, and the syllables felt like hammers striking the bones of reality itself. "Primitive, divided, fragile. Their technology is laughable. Their fleets are nothing but fireflies against the night. Within hours they will kneel. Within hours their species will cease to matter." A ripple of approval moved through the council. Thousands of alien eyes, some compound, some singular, glinted with anticipation. Tentacles tapped consoles in rhythm. Wings shuddered in excitement. For decades, the Dominion had studied humanity, catalogued their weaknesses, simulated every conceivable scenario. And yet, Vrel's statement carried more than certainty. It carried the weight of finality. "Do you comprehend, delegates?" he continued. "Their world is fractured. Their governments squabble. Their fleets are scattered across the Sol system like insects swarming a dead tree. This is not war, this is extermination. Every human settlement can be obliterated without challenge. Every fleet will burn before they even comprehend the meaning of fire. Our strategy is flawless. Mercy is irrelevant." An Andrix diplomat, his crystalline carapace catching the light, whispered to his neighbor. "Finally, the vermin will kneel." Vrel raised a limb to silence the whisper. "Kneeling will not be necessary," he said, voice silky with scorn. "Obedience will be instantaneous. Our fleets will descend upon their worlds. Their cities will be reduced to molten glass. Their scientists and generals will scream into the void while we erase their histories. Humanity is irrelevant." And yet, unknown to Vrel and every council member, they had overlooked a single, critical variable: unpredictability. Far from the glittering spires, humanity prepared in silence. In the shadowed corridors of a fleet assembled beyond the fringe of Andrix-controlled space, Admiral Rezekale stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at a hollow map of the Sol system. His uniform was threadbare by alien standards, faded olive green, creased sleeves, but the weight of command rested squarely on broad shoulders. Every line of code, every deployment schedule, every tactical diagram had been designed with one goal: make the Dominion's confidence bleed, slowly and then suddenly. Captain Lena Hart, his second in command, leaned against the rail of the bridge, arms folded, eyes scanning the display with an expression that mixed amusement and deadly focus. "They'll think we're slow," she said, voice quiet enough that only Kale could hear. "They'll think we're outmatched. And they'll be wrong. Again." Kale's grin was brief, sharp, like the edge of a knife catching light. "I love being underestimated," he said. "Makes the surprises so much more satisfying." The humans had studied the Dominion as rigorously as the Dominion had studied them. Not to simulate weaknesses, but to identify expectations. And they had learned something profoundly terrifying: alien arrogance could be weaponized. Orders were given, but not with panic. Ships hummed quietly as crews completed final calibrations. Maintenance bots moved with eerie precision across decks, swapping energy cores, tuning weapons, checking shields. And all the while, human commanders drank coffee. Not as ritual. Not as superstition. But as a subtle declaration, calm in the eye of the storm. If the Dominion believed humans were scared, they had misread everything. Fear, Kale knew, was a luxury the Andrix would never understand. 1,000 light-years away, the Andrix Council was already preparing for the final offensive. Fleet commanders reported in from orbital platforms and hyperspace nodes. Battle simulations had been run 1,000 times, each producing the same result: human annihilation within hours. No scenario showed the humans emerging even partially intact. Vrel's confidence was absolute. And that was their mistake. Kale tapped the edge of the hollow map. Theta squadrons, he said. Pre-warp check. Keep it quiet. We'll let them hear it when it's too late. Hart tilted her head. You mean we're not letting them launch first? Not if we don't have to, Kale replied. Let them announce our destruction. Let them celebrate. It'll taste sweeter when we turn their celebration into panic. The humans' opening plan was deceptively simple. A small flotilla would enter Andrix's space, performing a reconnaissance sweep. On paper, it was almost laughable, a dozen frigates against a fleet of thousands. But Kale's plan wasn't built on matching strength with strength. It was built on thinking the unthinkable. Every torpedo, every drone, every electronic countermeasure had been optimized not to kill directly but to sow chaos. The Dominion was a machine, and the humans knew exactly which gears to jam. Back in the council chamber, Vrel continued his lecture on humanity's futility. Their leaders are unremarkable. Their armies lack cohesion. Their moral codes will fracture under the weight of true war. Humanity cannot survive this. A low hum rippled through the chamber. Some delegates turned to see their communications networks spark with minor anomalies, intermittent static, tiny data fluctuations, unusual code signatures. Vrel ignored it. He had dismissed such trivialities before, and he would do so again. Meanwhile, the humans were watching. On the command deck of the Indomitable, Kale's eyes flicked across multiple displays. Sensor readings indicated the Council's primary nodes, the fleet concentrations, and the orbital armaments. Every move had been anticipated. Every contingency planned. The Dominion believed itself untouchable, but that was precisely why it was vulnerable. Hart leaned closer to Kale. You think they'll react like the simulations predict? Kale's grin returned. No. They'll panic. But not immediately. They'll wait to believe it's overconfident humans bluffing. Then, the moment they relax, we'll strike. Outside, the void was silent. Stars glimmered indifferent. Yet within the human fleet, the hum of power, the subtle thrum of quantum engines, and the quiet confidence of the crews created a tension that was almost tangible. It was the calm before an unimaginable storm, a storm the Andrix had not foreseen and could not comprehend. Vrel, blissfully unaware of the trap closing around him, gestured grandly at the council. Remember this, delegates, he said. The end of humanity is imminent. And when it is gone, the galaxy will rejoice. Far across space, Kale's final words before initiating the fleet jump were almost mundane. Let's see how they like being wrong. And with that, the humans warped silently into Andrix space, unseen, unheard, and unstoppable. The first shots were meant to be ceremonial, a small, almost polite warning. A dozen human frigates, no larger than the Dominion shuttlecraft, slipped into Andrix space like shadows. In simulations, the Andrix would detect them, calculate their trajectory, and annihilate them without hesitation. That was the theory. But humans had never played by the Dominion's rules. In the council chamber, High Arbitrator Vrel hovered above the holographic display of Sol System. An unremarkable reconnaissance detachment, he said. No cause for alarm. They will be intercepted within standard engagement time. Prepare the annihilation protocols. The Andrix fleet commanders, their forms sleek and geometric, nodded in mechanical obedience. In minutes, hundreds of ships moved into formation, creating a lattice of overwhelming firepower, a web of lasers, plasma turrets, and missile vectors calculated to crush humanity before it blinked. What the Council didn't know, and could not know, was that the humans had already anticipated every vector, every firing solution, every engagement scenario the Andrix had simulated. Every human vessel carried adaptive AI drones, capable of learning, predicting, and countering in real time. They didn't just react, they anticipated. Ready the quantum torpedoes, Admiral Kale said, voice calm, almost bored. Keep it quiet until the fireworks begin. Captain Hart tapped her comm panel. Targeting nodes confirmed. Let's remind them who they're underestimating. The human fleet split silently, each frigate slipping past Endrick's sensor grids as if space itself had swallowed them. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, the first torpedoes fired, not in volleys, not in warning. A single projectile hit one of the Dominion's central command nodes. The explosion was instantaneous. Not a fireball, not a glow, but a collapse of matter. A chunk of the crystalline tower simply blinked out of existence. No sound, no radiation, no debris, just gone. 100 Andrick's officers were vaporized in the blink of an eye, their screams compressed into silence. Vrel froze. The high-pitched harmonic of his resonators quivered with disbelief. "Impossible!" he hissed. This cannot be!" The council chamber erupted in panic. Delegates clawed at their consoles, desperately trying to reroute communications, seal command nodes, salvage systems. Every calculation, every prediction, every assumption was wrong. The humans weren't following the rules, they were inventing new ones mid-battle. The Dominion's fleet responded. Thousands of ships turned, weapons blazing. Lasers streaked across the void, plasma arcs tore through space, and missiles screamed toward the human intruders. And then, they disappeared. Adaptive cloaking, micro-jumps, instantaneous maneuvers. Every human vessel avoided fire with uncanny precision. Every countermeasure the Dominion deployed was neutralized, recycled, and reflected back in deadly symmetry. A frigate dodged a plasma burst and, in the same motion, launched a micro-drone swarm that hacked into a cruiser's targeting system. Within seconds, the cruiser fired upon its own formation. "Do you see this?" Lena Hart murmured, leaning against the rail of her ship. "They don't even know what's happening yet." Kale's lips curled into a thin smile. "They never do. That's our advantage. Surprise and a little cruelty." From orbit, human drones targeted the Dominion's communication arrays. Every data stream, every tactical node, every AI assistant went haywire. Ships collided with one another in panic. Command sequences contradicted themselves. Fleet cohesion disintegrated in minutes. The Andricks had anticipated human weakness. They hadn't accounted for human ingenuity. In the council chamber, Vrel roared. "Override protocols! Launch the orbital defense grid! Fire everything!" The humans anticipated this too. Quantum torpedoes rained across the planet, disabling orbital weapon platforms before they could even charge. Mining lasers, dismissed as civilian technology, were hijacked remotely, redirected into cruisers and stations. Satellites meant for communications became weapons of mass destruction, crashing into fleets with surgical precision. And all the while, Kale maintained a voiceover that was almost casual. "Hi there," the broadcast began, echoing through every surviving channel. "You look worried. Don't worry. This won't take long." Vrel's 6 limbs slammed against his console. His resonator blared a shriek of frustration and rage. "Silence them!" he screamed, but the human systems were already inside the Dominion's networks, untouchable, untamed, unstoppable. By the time the first Andrick ships regrouped, human boarding parties had already infiltrated orbital stations. Marines moved through zero-gravity corridors like shadows, weapons firing in controlled bursts. The aliens' armored defenses were impressive, but the humans' tactics were unpredictable, combining brute force, cunning, and improvisation. A Dominion officer shouted over the chaos. "They're everywhere! How can a dozen ships, how?" And then the words died on his mandibles as a plasma sweep tore through the station's hull. Half the room vanished in an instant. Systems shorted. Lights flickered. The humans didn't just attack, they turned the Dominion's own tools into executioners. Kale's voice cut across the comms again, calm and infuriatingly detached. "Next time, don't underestimate us. We hate that." The Andrick's fleet fractured completely. Vrel's flagship drifted, engines offline, its shields failing. Other ships collided in panic, some accidentally firing on each other. The Dominion's algorithms, designed to optimize every scenario, failed spectacularly against improvisation, the one thing humans excelled at. Hart leaned over the tactical board. They're trying to fight back with brute force, she said. It's pathetic. Kale's gaze didn't leave the holomap. Pathetic is one word for it. Entertaining is another. In less than 30 minutes, the Dominion's carefully constructed offensive had collapsed. Communications with ground stations were severed. Fleet cohesion was non-existent. Entire command nodes were obliterated. The Council's certainty that humanity could not survive had evaporated like mist. Vril, desperate, attempted a final gambit. "Deploy the Omega weapon!" he shouted, voice breaking with panic. "Do it now!" Kale watched the readout blink. Omega-class superweapons, the ultimate planetary deterrent, fully armed and targeting human positions. A slow grin spread across Kale's face. "Oh, they're beautiful," he murmured. "They're going to love this." By the time the smoke of orbital battles cleared, Endrick's space was no longer a controlled empire. It was a graveyard of shattered fleets and collapsed command nodes. The Dominion's arrogance had been stripped bare, replaced with panic so complete that no simulation could predict its consequences. On the surface of the Dominion's primary world, a desert planet scarred by centuries of resource extraction and colonial expansion, human dropships descended like shadows over the ruins of industrial complexes. They were small, agile, armed not with overwhelming firepower but with precision, cunning, and the kind of adaptability no alien species could anticipate. Captain Lena Hart led the first wave, boots hitting the scorched earth with a soft crunch. Behind her, Marines moved in formation, weapons slung but eyes sharp, scanning for any sign of ambush. The Endricks, despite losing most of their fleet, were still armed and dangerous, but the humans didn't confront them head-on. They bypassed strongholds, slipped through sensor grids, and seized abandoned command hubs, turning alien technology into extensions of their own brutal will. Kale's voice cut through the comms, calm and measured. "Remember, we're not here to occupy. We're here to remind them. Every move, every weapon, every ship they thought controlled the war, they will now see it in reverse." Hart's squad rounded a corner in what remained of a city center. Crystalline walls gleamed like shards of ice, yet the once pristine architecture was crumbling from bombardment. "You think they saw this coming?" she muttered, scanning the horizon for patrols. Kale's reply was almost philosophical. "They don't understand possibility the way humans do. That's our advantage. They learn fear too slowly, and by the time they do, it's already too late." The Dominion's remaining forces tried to mount resistance, but every tactic they deployed was met with ruthless efficiency. Their advanced weaponry was turned against them with minimal casualties on the human side. Autonomous drones infiltrated turrets, overrode targeting protocols, and redirected devastating energy blasts into the Dominion's own lines. An Endrick's officer barked orders at a group of troops. "Seal the perimeter! Stop them! They cannot!" A single human marine, crouched behind a collapsed structure, tapped her comm link and whispered, "Already done." Moments later, energy beams tore through the barricade, destroying it, and the Endrick soldiers scattered in confusion. Meanwhile, Kale coordinated orbital strikes with surgical precision. Not indiscriminate bombardment, precision interventions designed to disable command nodes, cut off escape routes, and demoralize the enemy. Every explosion, every crack of a collapsing building, was carefully orchestrated to maximize psychological shock. Vril, hiding in a mobile command pod several kilometers away, watched through scrambled sensors as his empire crumbled. He had survived the orbital bombardment, the fleet destruction, and the tactical brilliance of the human ships, but he had not anticipated this. Humanity did not merely destroy, it reimagined warfare, bending tools, terrain, and timing into weapons of terror. He tried to regroup his officers. "We must counterattack. Concentrate our remaining forces. Target their command." But it was too late. The humans had already infiltrated his position. Microdrones, undetectable until impact, disabled sensors and severed comms. Ground troops moved in stealth corridors, neutralizing guard posts with precision strikes. Vrel's mobile pod shook as a controlled detonation blew a section of its hull into the desert. He barely avoided being caught in the blast, retreating further with a hiss of frustration and fear. Hart and her team advanced toward the Central Command facility. The building, once the symbol of Dominion control, was now a skeleton of glass and metal. Alarms blared, but they were meaningless. Humans had already hacked into the security system. Doors opened automatically as the Marines approached, and automated turrets turned inward, eliminating the last pockets of resistance. Inside, Vrel attempted to send a desperate message across the surviving networks. A plea, a warning, an order. Deploy the Nova arrays! Destroy them! Now! Kale watched the alert flash on his console, his expression unreadable. Oh, they'll deploy, he said softly. Just not the way they think. The human solution was brilliant in its simplicity. The Nova arrays, superweapons capable of leveling entire continents, were repurposed by human hackers in minutes. Instead of firing on the Marines below, they were rerouted to target orbital stations still under Dominion control, vaporizing ships in orbit, collapsing infrastructure, and turning the Dominion's ultimate deterrent into a self-inflicted disaster. Vrel's scream echoed through the communications network, distorted, broken. Impossible! This cannot. Kale leaned back in his chair, voice calm, almost casual. You were warned. You were arrogant. You made assumptions. And assumptions are human weaknesses you will never exploit. By the time the Andrix Council attempted to regroup, the humans had already solidified their hold on key positions. Every strategic point was controlled. Every remaining fleet in disarray. And yet, there was a larger picture, a psychological triumph. The humans hadn't just defeated the Dominion, they had shattered its perception of reality. Hart stood atop the Central Command Tower, overlooking the ruins. She radioed Kale. They're all fleeing. Vrel is gone. The rest, they're scattered. What now? Kale's grin was sharp, like a scalpel. Now? We make them remember. Every system, every fleet, every delegate, they will know humans cannot be underestimated. They will remember the day they believed themselves invincible, and were proven catastrophically wrong. The Dominion's surviving forces scrambled to retreat. Hyperdrives activated, shuttles fled toward unclaimed sectors, and entire planetary defenses fell silent. The humans, however, did not pursue indiscriminately. They allowed some ships to escape, a calculated mercy, an enduring psychological scar, a message of precision and control. Vrel, finally out of immediate danger, transmitted a final message to the galaxy, a distorted warning of human cruelty and ingenuity. This is not the end. Humanity cannot survive unchallenged. Every species must unite against. Kale cut the transmission with a flick of a command. His voice replaced Vrel's on every channel. End of warning. We're just getting started. In the silence that followed, the scale of human ingenuity became clear. Entire fleets had been destroyed or neutralized without a single conventional battle. The Dominion's ultimate weapons had turned against them. Key command structures were captured intact. And throughout it all, humans had maintained operational discipline, tactical brilliance, and an almost casual cruelty, the kind of calculated chaos that left their enemies terrified, humiliated, and unprepared for what came next. Hart finally lowered her weapon, scanning the horizon. You think this will stick? They'll rebuild, won't they? Kale's gaze was cold and unwavering. Maybe. But the memory of what they just faced will linger longer than any fleet or fortress. The galaxy now knows that underestimating humanity is a death sentence. And next time, they'll think twice before crossing us. As they gazed across the scorched landscape, the sun setting behind ruins of crystalline towers and twisted metal, a single truth crystallized in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. The humans did not merely fight wars. They ended wars. Before the enemy even knew they were at risk, humanity had rewritten the rules, remade the battlefield, and delivered a lesson that would echo across light years. And somewhere deep in Andrix space, High Arbitrator Vrel nursed his hatred and disbelief, unaware that humanity had already taken the next steps. They were no longer just survivors, fighters, or strategists. They were architects of inevitability. Humans didn't just win battles. They erased expectations. And the galaxy would never, ever forget. The galaxy woke to silence. Where once the Andrix Dominion had boasted fleets numbering in the tens of thousands, there was nothing but wreckage, scattered ships adrift, shattered command nodes, orbital stations reduced to molten husks. Planets once teeming with Dominion administration were silent, scarred, and evacuated. The arrogance that had filled the council chambers, the certainty that humanity would kneel, had been obliterated in minutes. Admiral Kale stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking down at the ruins of the Dominion's capital planet. Dust swirled across desolate streets, the remnants of shattered towers glinting in the dying light. He could feel the weight of the galaxy's attention, though no eyes watched him directly. Every surviving species would hear the stories, whisper the legends, and adjust their calculations of humanity forever. Captain Lena Hart leaned beside him, her boots propped on the railing. "You think they'll come back?" she asked, her voice quiet, thoughtful. Kale didn't turn. "They'll try. And when they do," his grin was sharp, predatory, "they'll find we've already won again. Humans aren't just fast. We're relentless. And we never forget." The surviving Andrix were scattered, leaderless, broken by the precision and unpredictability of human tactics. Vrel had fled, a shadow of the figure who once proclaimed humanity's extinction in ours. Every transmission he sent into the void carried terror, confusion, and a fractured sense of authority. But humanity did not hunt him. That would come later, if necessary. The humans were patient. They understood that fear was a weapon far more effective than destruction. Across the galaxy, other species began to take notice. Some convened emergency councils, debating whether to engage humans directly. Others retreated, reevaluating old strategies, old alliances, and old arrogance. The whispers began almost immediately. "They ended the war before it began. They turned our weapons on ourselves. They do not play by the rules." Humanity's victory was total but measured. They had destroyed what was necessary to win, disabled what could be turned against them, and left the rest as a cautionary tale. Entire fleets, once powerful symbols of dominance, floated in the void as monuments to the price of misjudgment. No mercy had been extended to those who resisted, but those who surrendered or fled were allowed to live, carrying back stories that would haunt their civilizations for generations. Hart activated a tactical holomap, displaying the remnants of the Dominion's forces. "We could wipe out the rest completely," she said, fingers tracing glowing lines over devastated fleets. "Finish it. Make sure no one rises again." Kale shook his head. "No. That's not how humans operate. We do not kill indiscriminately. We do not conquer, unless necessary. What we do is teach lessons. We make sure the galaxy knows what happens when you underestimate us. That's enough for now." It was a statement that would echo across star systems. Humans did not fight for domination, they fought for survival, for inevitability, for respect. And in doing so, they redefined the rules of war. Back on the desert planet, Hart's Marines moved through the remnants of Dominion command centers, securing key technology, and evacuating surviving aliens who had surrendered. The Andrix soldiers they captured were stunned, still processing the audacity and efficiency of the humans who had destroyed the Invincible. Their former commanders, their systems, their strategies, every expectation had been obliterated. A young Marine, just out of basic, whispered to Hart as they moved through a cratered plaza. Why didn't we just finish them?" Hart looked down at him, her face calm but sharp. "Because humans don't fight wars to feel powerful. We fight wars to survive, to win, and to make sure the enemy remembers. Fear is stronger than death." Kale's voice came over comms, soft but resolute. "Let this be clear. The galaxy will remember that humans do not follow expectations. We do not hesitate. We do not yield. We do not forget. And if you ever assume otherwise, you will pay the price." The Dominion survivors fled to unclaimed sectors, carrying tales of impossibility and terror. Vrel, once a figure of unshakable authority, hid in the void, obsessed with revenge but impotent against the human example. Everywhere he looked, he saw the consequences of underestimating a species that refused to conform to predictions. Meanwhile, human fleets regrouped silently. Ships moved with effortless precision, resources were resupplied, drones repaired, and marines rested. No celebration was needed. The humans understood victory as a matter of fact, not spectacle. Yet in every corner of their forces, there was satisfaction, a quiet, almost philosophical enjoyment of having been underestimated and having proven the universe wrong. Kale watched the holographic displays of galactic communications, observing how rumors spread faster than light in human-engineered networks. Tales of human efficiency, improvisation, and ruthlessness circulated across species, inspiring awe, fear, and a grudging respect. The story of the Dominion's annihilation would be retold for generations, and humanity would be at the center of every recounting. Hart leaned against the railing, gazing at the horizon. "Do you ever think we'll be challenged again?" Kale's eyes were steady, resolute. "Of course. The galaxy is full of arrogant fools. But they will all remember one rule: humans end wars before the enemy even understands they've started. We've set the standard. Every species will think twice before underestimating us again." And somewhere, in the farthest reaches of space, the surviving alien species whispered warnings to one another. The name of humanity became synonymous with unpredictability, strategy, and relentless determination. Legends grew instantly: humans who destroyed fleets, commandeered weapons, and shattered confidence in hours; humans who struck with precision, calculated cruelty, and cunning no alien mind could predict. It was a new order of warfare. And humanity did not seek to dominate. It sought only to survive, to endure, to ensure that underestimation became a fatal mistake for anyone who dared. Vrel, once a symbol of control and certainty, would remember this day for the rest of his life. Every calculation he had made had failed. Every simulation, every projection, every assumption had been wrong. Humanity had redefined power, not through numbers, not through technology alone, but through ingenuity, ruthlessness, and an indomitable will. Kale and Hart stood together on the bridge as the sun rose over the desert planet, light glinting off the ruins like shards of warning. "The galaxy will remember," Hart said quietly. Kale nodded. "Yes. But let them also remember this: humans don't just survive. Humans decide the outcome. And when we decide, nothing can stop us." For the first time in centuries, the Dominion's control was broken. For the first time, the galaxy understood a new truth: humanity could not be predicted, measured, or contained. They were unstoppable because they refused to play by rules anyone else could understand. And somewhere, drifting silently through the void, High Arbitrator Vrel swore vengeance, unaware that the humans had already moved far beyond retribution. Humanity did not seek revenge, they created inevitability. And in the galaxy's new order, inevitability belonged to humanity. The galaxy would remember. Humans didn't just win. Humans ended wars in minutes. And no one would ever underestimate them again.